It's Wimbledon season here in the UK, and I have been inspired to get a little more fit and healthy by playing some tennis myself. I obviously can't do that without wearing some fabulous fashion. This visor is deceptively simple to construct. Let me show you how I made it.
Hello and welcome to a millinery hat making video. My name is Ilona, I'm a milliner based in London, and today, inspired by Wimbledon, I'm making this tennis visor. There are 4 main considerations when making a visor. These are the size of your peak, for which I have created a pattern available to download from the link in the description box. You can also find this visor pattern on my Patreon, where there are extra resources and more content. Thank you so much to my current Patreons for your continual support. Next, you'll need to decide on the length of your band, for which I recommend taking your head measurement minus 5 centimeters. Remember to think ahead and choose a fastening. In my case, this will be an elastic stretched between some knots. Lastly, you will need a lining for comfort, but more on this later. Now for the actual structure. I used 6 meters of 1 centimeter wide mylar and starbright Swiss braid. This stuff is really interesting to work with because you can't poke a needle through it, otherwise it leaves unsightly holes and might even cause tears. So instead of sewing this braid like Milan straw on a machine, I have to weave it together by hand. For that, I need a tapestry needle, or any needle really, as long as it is blunt. I will obviously also need thread to hold it all together. On its own, the Swiss braid is a little flimsy, so I will need some Buckram for structure. Also, a 2.5 centimeter petersham ribbon, elastic, and a couple of monkey knot cufflinks. This is one of those rare occasions where there is no millinery wire in sight. So if you don't like wire, this one's for you. Oh, and I forgot to mention, it is handy to have some clothes pegs around to hold the strands of braid together. I'm going to start off by making the band. To do this, I have cut 4 equal lengths of the Swiss braid and I'm going to weave them together. As you cut into the braid, you will notice that it has a bit of thread hiding inside the weave. We'll talk about what this is later on in the video. To weave the braids together, tie the end of a thread to the end of the cut braid. Use the blunt tapestry needle to intermittently hook the needle through each part of the weave. My Swiss braid has a lovely accent of gold mylar running through it, so as I weave, I'm trying to match up the gold strands to form little chevrons. I think this makes it look a little more special. Incidentally, the chevrons look like little V's, which I have decided stand for victory. So I have named this design my Victory Visor.
Here are a couple of rules to make the weaving easier. Number 1. Use strong thread that doesn't snap. 2. When you get close to the end of your thread, don't tie it off and start a new one. Instead, join a new length of thread to the end of your current one. There are many different ways to join thread, but the way I have chosen to do this today is by using a simple double knot with my 2 thread ends. Other ways to join thread are using a magic knot or a loom knot. However, these can be fiddly with very thin sewing thread. Number 3. When you get to the end of a braid, weave the thread back on itself for a few chevrons to create a stronger end join. Number 4. Do the same when attaching a new braid. 5. To attach a new braid, use your continuous length of thread. Weave the thread perpendicular to your joining line through the braid chevrons to get to the other side. Make sure your thread stays inside the braid and remains invisible on both sides of your work. 6. To tie off your thread, don't try to tie it around the strand of braid. Instead, loop it around a previous joining stitch in between the strands of braid and tie a good strong end knot. To tie an end knot, make a loop around a joining stitch, then hook your needle 3 times into that loop. Gently pull on the thread and guide the knot into place. Here's the last one, 7. Don't be tempted to cut off the uneven ends of the braids. If you cut these, you also risk cutting through your weaving thread and your whole work might unravel. Once all the strands are joined, I need to fold them over and secure the ends from both sides. I am still using my blunt tapestry needle and this time weaving from the back to the front of the work. And of course, I am making sure that the thread doesn't show up on the front side. But it is okay if it's a bit of a mess on the back because this will be covered later. And now the exciting bit, to weave the peak. First off, start with the outer edge measurement plus about 4 centimeters. Remember that bit of string running through the inside of the braid? Now is the time to gently tug on it to pull it out. Find the same strand on the other side of the cut braid and also pull on it. This will curve the braid. Don't pull too much and try to curve it into the shape of the visor pattern. Time to weave this curve together with the second strand of braid. As with the visor band, I am matching up the gold parts to form little V's. This won't be possible all the way through the peak because as the curve gets shallower, the chevrons will stop matching up. Once I get to the end of the 2 strands, I can pull on some more of those strings in the braid. I am once again following the curve on the pattern. I am going to keep going in the same manner and add more strands following the peak pattern. As I add more strands, I found it helpful to use clothes pegs to hold the braids together. This is useful for matching up the gold chevrons. On the 3rd strand, I found it difficult to match all the gold V's, so I am only trying to match them at the centre front and right at the ends. As the weaving progresses, make sure you carry on following the same rules as for the band. Use strong thread that doesn't snap. Join any new thread onto your current one to extend it. At the end of a row of braids, weave the thread back on itself for a few chevrons. Do the same when attaching a new braid. Weave the thread up through the braid before attaching a new one. Once you add the last braid, tie off the thread in between the weave rather than to a strand in the braid. And most importantly, don't cut any of those unsightly ends of the braid. Don't worry about them, they are about to be hidden. I ended up making 11 rows of woven braids, with the last and shortest strand being almost flat and the least curved. To attach the previously woven band to the peak, find the centres of both and start weaving them together from the centre outwards. It is really important to follow the same joining curve as on the pattern, as that determines how flat or curved the peak ends up sitting. As I weave, I constantly refer to the pattern to make sure that it is correct. You can either draft your own pattern, or the peak pattern that I am using is available to download through my Patreon. The link to join is in the description box. Still following the aforementioned weaving rules, when I get to the end of the join, I am weaving the thread back on itself and tying it off inside the weave. Once both sides are sewn, it's time to sew on the buckram. I'm using a strip of buckram cut on the bias. If you want to find out more about the bias in millinery, I have a video on this linked in the top right. My bias buckram strip is just under twice the size of my petersham ribbon. Fold the edges towards the middle and press them down using an iron. This buckram will give the band some structure. I can't stiffen this braid because the stiffener has nothing to hold on to as the braid is too smooth. Moreover, it will dull the lovely gold mylar anyway. This is why the buckram is necessary. Before stitching it in place, I forgot to add the elastic fastening to the left side of the band. I'm adding a loop of white elastic, poking it through the right side and tying its ends in a simple knot. That knot gets hidden between the braid and the buckram. Once I have pinned the buckram down, I will weave it to the braid, still using a blunt tapestry needle. The next step is to add the monkey knot cufflinks. These will work as a sort of hook to loop the elastic around, thus securing the band around your head. I am adding one to the left at the elastic and one to the right for the elastic to hook over. The last step is to sew on the petersham ribbon. For those new to hat making, true millinery petersham ribbon is a very special type of ribbon. It is made using either cotton or viscose or rayon or a blend of these fibres. Due to being made out of these cellulose fibres, it can be curved into shape using an iron. But today we aren't going to curve it. However, the nice softness of true millinery petersham will feel really nice against your head compared to the stiff scratchiness of polyester or nylon grosgrain ribbon. This time, sew the ribbon on using a sharp millinery needle. I'm going to sew it only to the buckram, taking care not to poke my needle out through to the right side of the straw braid. I am making only a small tiny stab stitch in the eye of the ribbon and travelling the thread on the side of the buckram. And here is the finished hat. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more millinery videos and live streams. In the meantime, I think it's time for some tennis. I definitely won't make it to Wimbledon, but at least I am moving and trying to be fit and healthy. The least I can do is wear fabulous fashion whilst doing so. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time. Bye.
Oh, that was really bad. All the gear and no idea.